Hachette Audio presents Filthy Rich Politicians, the swamp creatures, latte liberals, and ruling class elites cashing in on America. Written by Matt K. Lewis. Read by Chris Abell. To my wife Erin, who brings me sunshine and makes it rain. Introduction. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. Jay-Z. Let me start by putting my maxed out credit cards on the table. We hear about the role money plays in politics all the time, but back in the mid-2000s, the very peak of the aughts, I had a front row seat in full view of the action. This was before I was a television commentator, before I wrote columns discussing politics, and before I had my own podcast. Come to think of it, it was before podcasts even existed. I was about 7 years into my political career at that point, and I had just finished managing an innovative, well-run, though ultimately losing congressional campaign. I was back in Washington, D.C., eager to apply the skills I had learned on the campaign trail to my new job as a political professional, what some news outlets might call an operative. I took some consulting jobs for issue advocacy and corporate communications. It sounds fancy, doesn't it? When you hear political operative, you might imagine James Carville, Paul Begala, Lee Atwater, Karl Rove, or George Stephanopoulos before he started hosting bubblegum morning infotainment shows. You know the type. Polished, cunning, and always thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead on the 3-dimensional chessboard that only they can see. I worked for some people who were like those guys, but as I found out quickly, I wasn't one of them. It turns out that people don't come knocking down your door when you run an innovative, well-run, though ultimately losing campaign, mostly because they focus on the ultimately losing part. So the consulting gigs I got became very important to support my twin goals of 1, not starving, and 2, not sleeping on the street. It all hit home when I did a project for the princely sum of $1,000. I'm only half joking by calling it princely. Back then, that G was important to me. It was rent, food, a car payment, and a minimum payment on a credit card. Today, $1,000 is still important to me, but I needed it back then. The problem? My client wasn't going to pay me until they got paid by their client. So I was waiting on not just 1, but 2 corporate accounting departments. If you've ever dealt with people...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?